Some time ago I reviewed the movie Typhoon Club, and it was the number 10 greatest Japanese movie on the premier Japanese film magazine. Well, lo and behold, I may have found one that's in the top 5 from 1953, Tokyo Story. Yeah. Yasujiro Ozu's Tokyo Story follows an aging couple, Tomi and Shukichi, on their journey from their rural village to visit their two married children in bustling post-war Tokyo. The reception, however, is disappointing. Too busy to entertain them, and the children send them off to the hot springs. After Tomi falls ill, she and Shukichi return home. The children, grief-stricken, hasten to be with her. Our simple tale unfolds one of the greatest of all Japanese films, starring Ozu regulars Jisoo Ryu and Setsuko Hara. The film reprises one of the director's favorite themes, that of generational conflict, in a way that's quintessentially Japanese yet universal in its appeal. This is, of course, from Criterion, so you were getting the Rolls Royce, the Cadillac, the Martin Aston, or heck, do we even hear? Pretty much they are the premier premier distributor for this international films and things like that. And I mean, in this movie right here, it's absolutely legendary. 1950s Japan coming after the rebuilding from the war and trying to create a new future. So let's get this couple that's living. It's like they want to see their children because it's when they visit the hustle and bustle of Tokyo, pre-Akihabara, by the way. Let's get them exposed, and it's like, hey, the family does genuinely care about them, but at the same time, they're too busy living a new, more, cosmopolitan or metro lifestyle would be the best way to describe it. So it's like, we take them out, we're going to go out for a walk, we're going to spend some time with the grandkids and things like that. It's kind of a generational conflict in the sense of that one of the children of the couple is a doctor, and is like, hey, he's taking care of this patient. It's going to be a while, and I forgot what their daughter's job is, but eventually it's revealed that they thought that the older generation was hoping that their son, the doctor, would have been in a more prominent position in like a Tokyo Ward or something like that, but apparently not. So this movie is also, this is after, when the Japanese surrendered and MacArthur came in, they had to declare certain things, like the emperor is not a descendant of, what was that, Amaterasu or something like that, or not a heavenly being, and still makes decisions here and there, and they had to take some influence from Western culture. So this movie kind of was interesting way of giving some commentary about like the way of how there was the more pastoral pre-World War II way of life versus what was then the new way of living, including the 3 imperial regalia for the households, not for the sword, mirror, and shield, but instead these were considered modern appliances of a washing machine, television, and refrigerator, just to give you an idea. So that's what's going on. It's coming into the 1950s with the Western influence, but then lo and behold, a decade later, there would be a lot of old political strife of right wing versus left wing. And this would happen in Italy, and then here in the States in 2025. Funny how history shows again and again how nature points out the folly of man. Godzilla. Anyway, and it's just a generational conflict of just the old way of life versus the more, like I said, a metropolitan way. and we get some truly phenomenal performances from those two that are mentioned, especially the grandpa, who's, it's like he's, I feel like he and his wife feel like they're being a burden on the family, saying, oh, everything. I was like, you always take us out, but it's always at an expense. So the family does manage to put them at actually a rather nice hot spring resort, and an onsen, I believe. They realize, hey, that this place is too, it's for the younger generation. It's not for us. So then, eventually the grandfather goes out and he meets up with, what was that, a police chief at the time, and another friend of theirs, and they go out and get plastered, which was kind of funny. And they get one of the waitresses saying, yeah, you've had enough, go home. And they talked about like how they weren't exactly disappointed. They were not disappointed in their children, but they just didn't really understand the changes that were happening, because when you live in a little rural town versus Tokyo, it's like, they're drinking, they're stumbling, and things like that. And eventually, it's like, yeah, we just kind of have to realize that, times are changing, and it's like we place too much expectations on them, and eventually they realize, okay, we need to just kind of alter our perspective on life and things like that. So it's one of those, and eventually, it's like they comically stumble home, and then one of the daughters has to get like, what was that, like a mattress and everything else prepared for them. So that was kind of funny. It's like really the only funny part of the movie. And then the grandmother was talking with, what was that, Noriko, I think that's like the daughter-in-law or a neighbor or something like that. It's anyway, and it's pretty interesting to see, and because this whole family is busy, it's like it feels like, hey, it's like they're there for each other at the same time they're not. So what does it ultimately lead to? Well, the grandmother developing an illness, I think maybe from the travel of going from on a train all the way from whatever city to Tokyo. But at the same time, I felt like that was coming before, but just the commute kind of exacerbated some of the syndromes, and ultimately the family has to reconcile and start facing towards the future and stuff like that. So it's some pretty poignant, powerful, hitting stuff, and great conversations about, like, life can be disappointing sometimes, but you gotta make the best of what you're given and try and take influence from other people and apply it to your own life. So that's what I got from it. So there was like the so it's an intense personal story. There's imagery of the more modernization of Japan, in the sense of like, here's a factory, here's some modern housing. If you've seen some anime, you know exactly the houses that I'm talking about, the apartments that are kind of all in a row. This is, I guess, just meant to represent like some, like, the country's hesitation about adopting new ways of life. It's like, get this giant factory. It kind of looks like, what was that, the factory on on the album cover for Pink Floyd's Animals. It's like that. Some other parts of modernization and things like that. So it's not done in a negative way. It's done in a way that kind of shows that, I guess, the dichotomy between this, and it's ultimately a way of just to mediate on everything that's being said. So take of that what you will. One of the techniques used is like, sometimes the characters will leave to the right and then come back on the left, right, something like that. And usually rather than having like two characters 180 degrees from each other, they'll be sometimes talking at like if I'm right here, then another person will be like right here on the couch. So that was a very unique way just to be like, hey, this is how people are, and it has nothing to do with just how, like, it's all just set up in most traditional movies. And there's also a usage of the tatami shot, and you're wondering what's that. well, most Japanese houses have a tatami mat, which makes it easier to clean. It's kind of like rice wood or something like that. I'm trying to remember, but it's lowered down, so one, that way you can feel like you were part of it, like you're an audience member participating, and two, um, that way there's lack of, that way you can have a minimal crew to figure out, get everything going on. In fact, even for the production, they had to, yeah, trivia, they had to construct like a lower ceiling or whatever, because where the camera was, some of the, or that the master prints were lost, so they had to use existing duplicates to be able to ultimately form it, and it would take roughly 4.5 hours to commute from the rural village to Tokyo nowadays. Back then, it must have probably been taking 6. So yeah, absolute legendary film, 100% highly recommended if you want something that's truly uniquely Japanese, because this wasn't shown until like 1972 here in the States, when other movies, like Rashomon and other ones started gaining popularity. Truly, 10 out of 10. I highly recommend that you watch Tokyo Story.